Hey 7th graders, welcome to Part C. And again, you're checking your work with the answer key at first, meaning you've already tried the problems before you're looking at this video. If you have anything incorrect, then come along with me as I go through the answers, and if not, write down the secret word and head to the next video. So here's an answer key. Alright, if all of that made sense, go ahead and write down the secret words, these secret words, and head to the next page. If not, stay tuned and I'm going to go over how to do these. Alright, so hopefully working with equal sharing problems and the fraction group problems from these past 2 weeks, fractions are starting to make conceptual sense to you if they didn't before. So 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3. And I'm having you guys look at this because some people just think that 2/3 means 2 parts shaded out of 3 total. It's a little bit more complicated than that. If you have a whole and you break it up into 3 pieces, then that's why these pieces are called thirds, because that's how many parts we broke the whole up into, and then however many of the parts we have, that's the numerator. So 1/3 is one of these little pieces, which is a third big, and another third is another third of the whole, and in total that would be 2/3. So that's how we write that. If this is what a whole broken up into thirds looks like, then if we have a third plus a third plus a third, that's 1, 2, 3. We can write that as 3/3, but you really should think of that as a whole. Because if we break the whole into 3 parts and then you have 3 of them, that's going to fill everything back up. Now for C, it looks like I have a third and a third and a third and a third. Alright, since I know that 3/3 makes a whole, I'm going to label that. And then all I'm left with is 1/3 extra. So I know that I'm going to have 1 whole and 1/3 extra. You could have also said that that's 4/3 because that's what we have in total. We have 4 of these pieces that are each thirds. And this mean the same thing. Alright, now we're moving on to fourths. And so to understand what a fourth is, just imagine having a whole chocolate bar and breaking it up into 4 pieces. Each of these little pieces is a fourth of a whole chocolate bar. So if I have a fourth plus a fourth plus a fourth, that's the same as saying I have 3 fourths. So I have 3 pieces, and each of them is a fourth of the whole. The way that you write that as a fraction is 3/4, but that's what it means. In E, I know that I'm going to have enough fourths to make a whole, because 1, 2, 3, 4/4 would fill up a whole amount. So this is a whole, and we're left with 1/4 left over. So that would be 1 whole and another fourth of a whole. You could have also just said that that was 5/4, which is written like this. In F, we have a bunch of sixths. I imagine a whole broken up into 6 parts, and I know that if I had all 6 of them, I'd have a whole, but here I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in words, that would look like 5/6. Hard to say. But mathematically, you would write it like this, 5/6. In question G, I see that now we do have enough sixths to make an entire whole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be a whole, and you're left with 2/6 left over. So that's 1 and 2/6. But 2/6 is actually equivalent to something else, and you can see it if I shade in these 2/6. That's my least favorite word in the world. I see that that's the same as if we actually only split the whole up into 3 parts and shaded one of them in. So see how the shaded area is the same in both? That's what an equivalent fraction is. So we still have that whole, but we could say that 2/6 is the same as a third. Now, a very helpful way to think about fractions is as these numbers that can be expanded into whatever the parts that we added. Kind of like doing what we just did, but backwards. So if I have the fraction 3/5, I know that that's telling me that I have 3 1/5. So that's 3 of these. 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. And it helps to be able to expand fractions out like that when we do harder things like multiplying, dividing, subtracting fractions. So 5 of my favorite word, 6ths, that would be like saying we have 5 pieces and each piece is 1/6. Now 1 1/3, I wanted you to try to break that up into 4 pieces, which looks a little strange, but if you think about that whole, a whole, if we're thinking in terms of thirds, one whole is 3/3, because if I took a whole and broke it up into 3 pieces, the whole thing would be all 3 of them, which is 3/3. So I'm going to start by doing the whole, which is a third, and a third. So of our original fraction, that whole is these 3. But then it's one whole and an extra third, so I'm going to do my extra third right there. And 1 1/3 is the same as 4/3. Speaking of giving answers away, I just said 1 1/3 is the same as 4/3. 4/3 means that we have 4 parts, and each of them is a third big, and we know that that is equivalent to 1 1/3. Alright, for the last 3, I just wanted you to expand them any way you could. So if I have 3/7, that's like I have 3 little parts, and each part is 1/7 of the whole. 1 2/7, you can kind of do whatever you want with that. You could have just said that that's a whole and a 7th and another 7th, but you could have also split this one up into 7. I guess I could write 7 of 1/7, because I don't want to write that over and over and over again. Alright, and then for the last one we have 2 1/6. That's like a whole and another whole and 1/6, but if I think of breaking the whole into sixths, I know that one whole is going to be 6 of 1/6, and then another 6 of 1/6. So maybe you wrote them all out. In total, you should end up with 13 1/6, which you can write like that. Here, I'm curious for your creativity and also if you're understanding how to expand fractions into unit fractions like we've been doing. So I gave you one example here, and you're just sort of picking a fraction that has more than one part to it. So it could be as simple as, I know that 2/3 is 1/3 plus 1/3. I want you to come up with 10 of these equivalent fraction number sentences, things that are true. And that's the end of this video, so finish this up if you haven't.